are some specific players that you think need to show an improvement who maybe have a little bit of fire on them coming out of this bye week? Can you give me 2 or 3 on either side of the ball?
Good question. I think Bosa has to start racking up those sacks.
Especially now with Chase Young, right? Because same thing we were talking about Steve Wilkes and his excuses. Hey, Bosa, this should open you up,
No excuses anymore. Steve Wilkes, eyes on you. I want to see Hargrave step up because really over the last month, he hasn't done all that much. I think that John Feliciano is going to be under the microscope filling in for Aaron Banks at left guard. I think that Jake Brendel, Spencer Burford, Colton McKivitz all have to play better. I think that Shanahan has to coach the offense a little bit better. I think they have to get back to their bread and butter, which is being a complementary football team, running it and throwing it. And they've thrown it a little bit too much, probably too much for their liking. But even with that being said, Brock Purdy against the Vikings, good first 3 quarters, ended poorly against Cincinnati. He was chucking it all over the yard. He was making plays with his legs. He was looking like a stud. So of 8 of his last quarters, in 6 of them, he's played really well. 2 of them, he's played poorly. So I think that he has to step it up a little bit as the game gets a little bit muddied and maybe a little bit closer and pressure-packed late.
I'd love to ask you about your opinions on Brock Purdy and if they've changed over the last 2 weeks with these like interceptions that have came. I think like this is interesting. I feel like my opinion on him hasn't changed that much because I didn't see him as a guy that would have been able to carry a team that had maybe some problems with game calling or creativity within the offensive scheme, that had no run game, and that had a defense that wasn't carrying him. Like, I have always thought that Brock Purdy was really good for this particular 49ers team this year with all of its weapons, with an amazing play caller. But once, injuries happened and maybe I don't know if Kyle's in a little bit of a lull, but I've been pretty disappointed with him. I know they're missing Trent Williams and Deebo Samuel, but I felt like with a week to scheme around those things, that George Kittle could have been involved more. Ray McLeod could have stepped in in that Deebo role a little bit bigger. Jordan Mason has not been seen, even though he averages 6 yards a carry. I do know he struggles with pass protection. To me, that falls on the coaching because he's been there for a year. So I'm like, if he's like, why has no one sat down and been like, hey, you're a really good runner, we need you to get better in this particular area? Like, if this guy's on your team for 2 years, to me, unless, because he probably wants an opportunity to play, right? Like, you can like level with him and be like, hey, if you want to be on this team,
I
this
wish
is
we
an
saw
area
him
of
play
weakness
more
for you. Yeah. So my opinion of Brock Purdy hadn't changed that much because I didn't think that he would be able to carry a team like solely on his own at this point. I think of him as a above average quarterback, really good quarterback, but not like a superstar right now. And I don't think that the rest of the team has played at a level that maybe would highlight his strengths. Now I do think he needs to stop doing too much because, like you said, he's had some good quarters, but if I was like giving him a letter grade, would put more weight on the end of the, in the most pivotal moments. If you show up or don't show up, that's what's going to matter most, right? Like when people think about Joe Montana, they're not like, oh, well, like sometimes he was down in games. They're like, okay, well, like he always came back and won, and that is
5
like what
rings.
made him a legend. So,
with Purdy,
how do you
to
feel
answer
about
your
Brock Purdy right
question,
now?
I think it goes back to kind of what I just said. Like, the guy went 10-0 to start his career in the regular season. And when you're scouting quarterback, some of the things that you look for, it's not always, okay, is he 6'4", 230 with a rocket arm? Those things are sometimes important, but I think sometimes what's more important, accuracy, being decisive, being able to go through your progressions, make quick reads, make improvisational plays, being able to run and master the offense, being able to process fast. Like, Brock Purdy has been able to do all of that at a really, really high level. And that's veteran type of quarterback play for a guy who's still really inexperienced. And I think his college experience at Iowa State certainly has helped him in those areas where he carries himself in a mature way and he plays maturely. But going back to what I said, and I kind of teased that off the start, 6 of the last 8 quarters, he's played really well. Like, the arm strength isn't really an issue for me. He's hitting out routes downfield and to the sideline to
That one
Brandon
to George
Ayuk.
Kittle
A
in
couple of the
the
seam
Bengals game.
throws down the numbers and down the seams that he threw to the middle of the field to Ayuk, to George Kittle with touch, accuracy, layering footballs in there, being able to see that the defense is covering up something to the left and then make that adjustment to throw center field. Like, those are high level quarterbacking things. I'm not going to write him off after a couple of bad games. And I'm still a believer in him. I'm not sure he's ever going to be like one of the best quarterbacks ever, but I think for this team with head coach Kyle Shanahan, I think that he can get back to how he was playing before. And if the Niners are playing complementary football and they're not turning the football over, which is a huge thing, they're going to be just fine. Because if you go back and look at their turnovers, Ashley, you go back and look at their missed field goals, which I kind of count as turnovers because they basically are. The team gets the ball from the spot of the kick. A lot of them have happened on the opponent's side of the field, deep in opponent's territory, when even if San Francisco didn't pick up a first down, that's 3 points right there. 3 points allows you to beat Cleveland. Another touchdown instead of McCaffrey fumbling on the first drive of the game allows you to beat Minnesota. So there are things that the Niners can fix here, and these issues are fixable, that I think that they can be okay, and I think that Brock Purdy can be okay.
I completely